So while it's on my mind, I think about it. I had been asked by a viewer, probably been, I don't know how many months ago now, about doing a review, or had I done a review on the Rancher here. And the truth is, I don't really think I ever have. I mean, I think the videos since I got it have just kind of been like a rolling review, if you will. But you know, it's definitely, it's been a good four-wheeler. You know, I had a 350 Rancher before this one, the 2006 model, and it was just two-wheel drive, but it had the ES in it, and I really liked it a whole lot. But you know, moving to this Rancher AT here, it's a 2012 model. It's you know, it's got the independent rear suspension, you know, and it's liquid cooled, four-wheel drive, and the ability, you know, for the automatic transmission mode and the ES combined. It's definitely a lot of upgrade compared to anything that I had before it. Just, you know, the ride quality alone is a big difference. Fuel injection, that's another thing, you know, about it. It's first fuel injected ATV I've owned, and to be honest with you, you know, nowadays, I mean, with the exception of the Recon, there's not another one in Honda's lineup that I know. Well, there isn't, unless it's a youth model or possibly a sport quad that is still carbureted. But after having the fuel injection, is really nice because you don't have to fool with the choke. You know, it starts right up, stays running, and you can start it up, and once it starts running, you can let it warm up, and you know, you can go about doing something else. You don't have to sit there and adjust the choke or keep your hand on the throttle to keep it running. So, you know, that's really nice convenience. And too, you know, for changing altitude, riding in the mountains and stuff like that, you don't have to have a carb rejetted based on the altitude like you would for a carbureted model. So all that stuff, you know, it just makes it a lot more user friendly. You know, I guess somebody would say, would I recommend this to anybody? Yeah, I definitely would recommend the Rancher AT to anybody who was looking for an ATV that was you know, recreational riding. One thing you have to remember, and I realized it after I got the Rancher AT here, a difference in it from my 350 Rancher, and I've also read that other people say this about the other 420 Ranchers that are the solid rear axle model, or well, yeah, and you know, any of those basically, that they have a that the gearing is a lot different. So basically, this Rancher AT is geared higher than the solid rear axle Ranchers are. And I could even tell that the 350 Rancher I had was geared a lot lower than this one is. So, you know, for that, that kind of affects things slightly. It's not a deal breaker, but if you're looking to do all-out work, hauling real heavy loads and stuff like that, I would say go with the solid rear axle model, just for the simple reason it's geared lower. Not to say you can't do work with this one, because you certainly can. It's just not geared as low. Like first gear, for instance, is not as low in this one as it is in the solid rear axle 420 Rancher. But so that's different, you know, but you get used to it after a while. I mean, I think really Honda should offer, or should have offered it on this, but even now they ought to on the new Rancher AT. They call it a Rancher DCT now, and they have two versions of it. One's a solid axle with the DCT, and mind you, the solid axle DCT model would have the same gearing as the IRS model with the DCT. So both of those would be geared higher than, say, a Rancher with the solid rear axle and either the straight ES mode or the foot shift model transmission, if you follow my drift there. But anyway, but what I was getting ready to say is that, like on this one, although it's never stalled out on me or anything on the hill or anything like that, I do think it would have been nice if Honda had offered a low range gearbox and a high range like they do on the new Rubicon. I think that would have been really nice to have had on this Rancher AT, or like I said, now they call it just the DCT. This is a DCT transmission in this Rancher here. It's just, back then they didn't refer to it as that, they just said Rancher AT. But anyway, same thing. Because this one has the dual clutch technology in it too. This was the first platform of the utility ATV that they put the dual clutch transmission in, was the Rancher. So, but now they've got it in the Rubicon too, and some of the Pioneer side-by-sides. But having that low range gearbox would just be nice, because it would be just like having, you know, in a truck or a Jeep, you have 4 low, 4 high, and allow you to gear it down a little bit more so that it pulled a little stronger in some situations like thick mud. Thick mud would be a time where you really could use that low range in this transmission on here. So that would be one thing, you know, I would change about it. I mean, if I could, it would be just having that low range gearbox. Ride quality is really good. Like I said, the IRS is smooth. I mean, I'm sure there are ATVs out there that ride smoother, but you know, as far as the Hondas go, I mean, it's been the best, smoothest riding one that I've owned. And I mean, the 350 Rancher I had before, actually for a solid rear axle, it rode pretty plush. But this one, you know, the seat's comfortable on it, and soft, you know, it's good for riding for long periods of time. It's definitely a big difference in this compared to the Recon. I mean, in terms of comfort and all-day riding, it's definitely a lot easier to do on this model here, which, I mean, it stands to reason, but, and you know, this one has the electric power steering as well. I'd highly recommend that, you know, if somebody was looking to get one of these. If it's not already on there, you know, I'd definitely pick a model that had it. And, you know, I rode for years without power steering, and you know, when power steering came out, I thought, well, that's, you know, that's a nice feature, but you know, I didn't really know if I really needed it, you know. But you realize, especially coming to a place like Uwharrie right here, where you have a lot of rocks and ruts. Scarlett can tell you that having power steering versus not having power steering, even if you're strong enough to steer an ATV without power steering and it not bother you in that respect, the power steering alone is good to have for the anti-kickback feature. That when you're on that was different. Was that a moped or what was that thing? I couldn't even tell if it was running. It was so quiet when it came by. Whew. That was unexpected. But I don't know, what was I saying there? Yeah. But yeah, the power steering, I would highly recommend it. Yeah, even if you don't think you need it, it's worth a little bit of extra money for it. I would definitely get it. It's just that anti-kickback feature. You hit a rock or a rut or a tree root. And Scarlett had one of the, I don't know, may have been about the second time we came out here to Uwharrie. It was on the recon there, and it kicked back and it knocked the handlebar into her leg, and you know, kind of bruised her leg up real bad. You know, it jerked the bar out of her hands. So that's my example of why it's nice to have it, because I've yet to have that happen on the Rancher here. It keeps that kickback down. So if you have the option to get electric power steering on an ATV, whatever it is, and if you're looking at the Honda, I mean, I would recommend it. You know, I've heard Yamaha's power steering is really good too. So yeah, definitely, I'd highly recommend that as an option on one. And you know, the four-wheel drive on this this Rancher here has worked really good for me. I really haven't been through anything yet that has stopped it. I'm not saying, when I say that, I'm not saying that it's, you know, it's like a tank and it could just go through any mud hole there is, because that wouldn't be true. But for what I do, the type riding that I do, and stuff I have encountered when I do use four-wheel drive, I think it does perfect for me. That trax locks. Front differential seems to work all right. You know, I do wish that it had differential lock just as a safety precaution. You did get in a real sticky situation. But again, it's one of those things, kind of like the low-range gearbox. You know, you wish you had it, but you can live without it on this machine and get by okay. You know, the winch is a good thing to have that I had added on. It was a genuine Honda accessory winch. It's a Warren winch, actually. I think it's a 2,500 pound. And I've used it a handful of times, you know, mostly for dragging trees off the trail or something, and occasionally, you know, winching out one of the recons or something like that. But I don't know that I've actually had to use it to winch out the Rancher yet, but the winch works really good. That's another thing kind of tying in with the winch, is that I really would brag about the Rancher. The charging system on here is beefy. Can't remember the exact wattage output that it generates, but it's respectable. And if I remember right, I think that the Rancher AT models get a beefed up generator, alternator, whichever it is, compared to the standard Rancher. I guess due to the extra electronics like the power steering and the DCT stuff, and they claim, you know, it allows you to run more electrical accessories on here without it draining the battery. So that definitely is a good thing. You know, it can sit for a while, and I do occasionally put the battery tender on it in the winter time, but it does a pretty decent job when you're riding it fairly regularly. You know that it puts a good charge back in your battery, so it's a good thing. And I added the DC outlet accessory up there, which is good, you know, if you need to charge your phone or camera or something like that, GPS. I don't use it a whole lot because most of the time when I ride, my phone stays pretty well charged. I'm not on it that much anyway, so. But again, it's just one of those things that's nice to have. And this one thing that's good about this engine, the 420, it's a very tractable power band in it. It's not, I mean, you're not going to win any, you know, real races or nothing with it, and but it's, you know, it's got low end torque and it's fuel efficient. That's another plus. And you don't, you know, generally you don't have to, remember going left there, babe, would be a better option. Yeah. But you don't have to rev it to death either to get the power out of it. You know, it's very rarely do I have to, like, you know, floor it with the throttle, you know, to get it to do what I want it to do. So it's got good low end torque. And if it, like I said, you know, if it had a low range gearbox, man, I could only imagine how torquey it would be. And that low range would allow you to tow more with it. You know, that'd be another benefit of having that I didn't mention before. So the engine is, you know, the engine's been really good. Yeah, the engine, I will say this, I mean, it puts off a lot of heat when you're riding in the summertime like this, and fan cycles on and off a lot, you know, but I really, to be honest with you, I mean, that's kind of to be expected. You're going, pretty much for me, anytime you're going under 10 miles an hour, that's kind of the way it is, because it's just not much air moving across the radiator, so fan has to cycle on right much. But never had the high temperature light come on, knock on wood as they say. And I just keep an eye on the coolant, make sure it's where it's supposed to be level wise, and it's, like I said, it's, you know, it's done good for me. The engine has been a good one. Let's see what else. Getting back to kind of like the upgrades, I mean, this is in no particular order. I'm literally just pulling this off the top of my head kind of thing. Like I said, it's a bit of a rolling review here. We covered the winch being a good option to have, because I mean, that's one thing about this Rancher, is it's very heavy. So I forget the exact weight. I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 670 or 80 pounds, if I'm not mistaken, in stock trim. And for comparison's sake, let's use like a Yamaha Grizzly 700. Well, if I remember correctly what I read, they weigh about 680 pounds, somewhere between 680 to 700 pounds, but that's a 700. Now the Rancher here weighing somewhere around that's heavy for a 420, and I can tell you pushing it is not particularly easy at all. It's not like pushing or rolling a Recon around when the engine's not running. But anyway, doing in the shade. But yeah, I mean, I just, I do the routine maintenance on it. I keep the oil changed, spark plug changed, air filter changed or cleaned, as needed. And, I just run a good quality gas in it. And it, like I said, I mean, periodically I change the differential fluid. I run that Lucas gear oil in there. Works really good. Oh yeah, the upgrades. Yeah, the Ricochet A-arm guards, I'd highly recommend them. The second week I owned this rancher here, I had a boot on the front axle up here, CV joint, got popped. I'm assuming by a stick or something or another. Just the second week that I owned it, and I had to have that replaced because I didn't have the time to do it myself, so that was kind of expensive. And I think that was, I don't know, probably, I think it was right around $200 parts and labor. But it was well worth investing, I don't know, 150 bucks I think or so for the set of front and back A-arm guards from Ricochet, and they've really kept that issue from arising again. Protect those boots a lot. So I'd highly recommend those as an upgrade, especially on ones that are four-wheel drive. You don't really need them quite as much unless you're just in a lot of rocks if you have a two-wheel drive model, but of course this model here is only offered in, or was only offered in, four-wheel drive, so having that extra protection for those boots and all up there is not a bad idea. I added this brush guard from Honda. I really like it a whole lot. It gives it an aggressive look, and it's really sturdy. It was easy to bolt on too. I mean, you can see that I'm actually lifting a little bit up on it like that, so definitely worth putting that on there to protect the front end, and it kind of gives it an aggressive look. I've put Herculiner, truck bed liner, on all the racks and the brush guard too, where the paint had kind of started wearing off in some places. Did that on the front and rear racks, and also did it on the Recon over there too. There are videos that we have in the past. You can check that out where we shows us doing that. But, let's see how many hours I've gotten on this thing. I don't even pay much attention to it. Let's see, that's got 237.2 hours and 1,350 miles. So it's and it's done really well during all that. I've been real impressed with it. Riding it, it seems to do really good in both modes. I think it's just personal preference, and it kind of is dictated by the terrain as far as which mode you ride in, whether you pick auto or the ES mode. Just depends. I think for the real technical terrain, probably the ES mode is better, but then again, I have ridden it in the auto mode, and it kind of with this transmission, the DCT, you have to learn it. And if you want it to downshift, you let up on the gas just a little bit, and you can make it downshift that way when it's in auto mode without taking your hand completely off the gas. It's just one of those things. The DCT is a transmission, you got to learn it. Once you learn it, it's it's not as awkward, and you're not as put off by it as, you know, like if you come from a machine that has a CVT and you go to this, you know, it's going to take you some time to adjust to it. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you're coming from a machine that has CVT transmission and you go to a DCT like Honda offers, it's a difference. You're going to have to learn about it, you know, and you have to learn the machine and what to do. So, you know, keeping that in mind, just kind of keep an open mind about it and give yourself time to learn it. Let's see, I added the Honda heated grips here. You can see the controller there. It's dual zone. Also has the thumb warmer. Again, it's kind of like the winch. I've only used it a handful of times, but when you're riding and it is cold, even with insulated gloves on, my hands get cold. And you can say what you want to. I mean, we live in North Carolina. It gets cold around here for us. Anybody that is a native of the state, you know, it gets cool, you know. So if this is the climate that you're used to, and when wintertime rolls around it gets cold, it's cold to you, you know. Granted, you live farther north, you're going to be more accustomed to the cold, but that's just a geographic, you know, thing. We all live in different places, so we all are affected different by temperature. So some people might laugh and say, well, you don't need heated grips, you know, that kind of thing. But I beg to differ. I know my personal preference, and I would highly recommend them. Scarlett really likes them. A lot of times if we're riding in the wintertime, you know, we'll switch off so she can have some time on this one to let her hands kind of thaw out a little bit. And they get so hot, I mean, you can't run them on the hottest setting for long. Most of the time halfway or two lights there is about all you need, you know, to keep it warm, keep your hands thawed out with gloves on. So I'd highly recommend those. They've worked good for me. The brakes work good on it. It's got 2 disc brakes up front that stop real good, and a single disc in the back. This is mounted on the drive shaft. You can kind of see it up in there. That works good as well. It's kind of up out of harm's way, you know. It stays cleaner up in there too, versus it being out here right up against the wheel inside of the rim there. So yeah, that, you know, I hadn't had any problems with that, which I don't use the brakes a whole lot, only when I have to. Most of the time the engine braking is so good on here that very seldom I actually have to use the actual brakes, but when I do, they work good. The foot pegs and floorboards have been really good. I mean, they're real durable. You got your rear scrub brake there. Use that on occasion sometimes, like if I have to release that rear brake lever to, you know, to change gears or something on a hill or something, I'll push that down just to hold it in place. But other than that, I don't use it a great deal. You know, the ease of servicing on this is pretty, you know, it's pretty straightforward. It's not a whole lot of complication to that. I mean, you got your batteries right back there. You know, you lift that off and can get right to that, to take it out or change it if you have to. Your air box is right here. You got 4 clips you pop off with your thumb. Lift the lid off. You know, it's a foam air filter. It's held on with a hose clamp. I mean, you just can't get much easier than that. I mean, you wash it, re-oil it, put it back in. I mean, it's very straightforward. It cleans filters the air good. Haven't had any problems with that. The snorkel for the air box is, it comes up here. This is it here, and it kind of snakes its way and opens up like right around in here somewhere behind there. This black piece does. You can see it better when you have this little triangular panel off here. And by the way, when you change the spark plug, you take this black piece off, and it gives you easier access to the spark plug on top of the engine. But you know, you pop this little side panel off here. You got your oil check dipstick there, is where you check the oil. So that's easy to get to. The new ones, they have a one-piece kind of hood or plastic piece, if you will, that goes over the center hump there, around the seat and down the sides, and it all comes up in one piece. I personally haven't messed with one of those, but anyway, it, you know, again, it provides access to all your maintenance needs and stuff like that. You pop this panel off on this side, and this is where you get to your oil fill cap is right there. And then behind this plate right here, these 3 10mm bolts here hold on this plate, and inside there is your cartridge style air filter. I mean, not air filter, but oil filter, excuse me. And that filters the oil out. Really easy to change. You know, you just buy the oil filter from Honda and pop it in there. You know, it's a little spring. You have to make sure you put that in there too, behind it, when you close it up, or else it won't work right. But again, very straightforward. I mean, it's not hard. Once you do it a couple of times, you know, it's very easy. So yeah, that's, you know, and the oil drain plug underneath is very easy to get to. I mean, it's not hard to do. The differentials have, you can get to their drain plugs too. You just have to crawl up under it and locate them, you know, and see where they're at. They have holes in the skid plate to allow you to access it. The only thing that's a little bit of a challenge is on this differential up front here. I'll see if I can get down here where you can see it. So right there is the fill and check plug for the front differential. Well, there's a little piece of plastic here that's part of the skid plate that comes up. The only problem is with that is that with the tools that I have, it's hard to get a wrench on that. Because you have the winch here, you have a upper control arm there, then this plastic sticks up. It's right in the path of the bolt there. I've thought about taking a Dremel and just kind of grinding that down a little bit so that I can put my wrench and socket on there easier. I mean, it's doable, but that's a little bit of a headache when you go to check or add differential oil to this front differential. Now the back one really hasn't been an issue, because there it is right there. No problems getting it on and off. You can get a wrench right in there, you know, so the back's not even an issue at all. So, but yeah, I mean, it's, you know, of course I've upgraded the wheels and tires on it. I rode it for a while with the stock tires, and really, to be honest, I probably the stock tires would do just about, you know, okay for anything that I'm doing, but these swamp lights have, you know, added a lot of traction to it and have definitely served me well. They're 6-ply. These are 25-inch. They're 25 by 8 by 12s up front, and 25 by 10 by 12 out back. And trying to think, I don't remember exactly how many miles I got on them, but they've been on the machine for a right good little while now. I mean, they've been on there, you know, let's see, probably since 2013 or 14, if I were to guess right off the top of my head. I don't know. I've been on there a while, and they've held up good. I mean, I don't ride them on pavement or anything. They still got really good tread life left on them. A lot of times looking at them on the GoPro, they look like they're worn out, but I mean, they've still got good tread front and back. They're not even anywhere near needing replacing yet, so they've done me well. And I'd recommend them. The only time that I've ever, not had the best traction, and then I don't even know what tire would have good traction on that, is the hard, slick red clay and the wet rocks with the red clay on them out here. Right after it had rained, was a little bit of a challenge in two-wheel drive climbing a hill. It would get to the top of the hill and it would spin, but once I put it in four-wheel drive, it would do just fine. It would climb right up it. So that's the only thing that I've noticed these tires have had trouble with, was that wet red clay when it's on those rocks that are embedded in the ground. But then, like I said, I really don't know what tire would have handled that better. I honestly I don't know. Yeah, I'd highly recommend them. And the ITP wheels, I really love them a whole lot. Really love the look of them. It's unfortunate that they don't make this model of these anymore. I looked for them recently, and they do not have the machined lip version like I have, and I really don't understand why, because in my personal opinion, it was one of the best looking wheels they had, and I liked it, too, because not a whole lot of people had it. So it made it kind of unique, and kind of a little bummed out now that they still don't make it, because if I ever did had another ATV like this that I customized, that I would probably get a set of them for it too. I just like them that much, but anyway, what are you gonna do? So yeah, definitely recommend the wheels and the tires. I mean, they've been good. And they're and now talking about the tires, I would not recommend on the Rancher AT or the DCT models. They come with a 24-inch tire. I would highly recommend, just my advice is, I would not go above a 25-inch on that, due to the fact of them being geared higher. I would not go higher in size than a 25-inch. That's just my personal opinion. If a lot of people run 26, 27, 28s on them and stuff like that, and but you're going to suffer a lot of power loss if you do that. These already took some power away from it. Now, I'm not saying it's like it just zapped all of it, but it made a difference. I mean, the added weight of these tires versus the stock is, it's noticeable. So keep that in mind, if you have one of these. That would just be my advice. I wouldn't go over a 25-inch, and I'm going to tell you, the 25-inch put me at about 10 inches of ground clearance over. It was stock. It was like, I don't know, 9.4 or 9.6. Well, no, it may have just been 9. I don't know. I think I gained like an inch of ground clearance, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere around 10 now. And I'm out here, riding on these rocks and stuff, and I haven't had it bottom out yet, and there's some pretty tall, jagged rocks sticking up out of the ground that you have to straddle. So, for what I do, these 25s are very adequate, and they don't take too much power away from the machine. So that's a good thing. That would just be my advice, size-wise, as far as tires go. On a machine like this that's geared higher. But anyway, let's see. You can see your coolant reservoirs back here on this model. Just make sure it stays between the upper and lower. You're fine. It's easy to get to. The cap is under that black cover where the battery's at. You just pop that off and you get right to it. Just use the Honda coolant. Works fine. The rear brake fluid reservoir is right there. And the front brake fluid reservoir is up front here, like it is on just about all Hondas. Has the little sight glass on it right there. Never had to add brake fluid to it. It does just fine. So, but anyway. Yep. But yeah, the suspension is held up really good. I've had no complaints about that. It rides smooth, and but anyway, all in all, I mean, you know, I like the display. You know, it does good, easy to read, lights up good at night. The headlights work really good for night riding as well, for what I do. But all in all, yeah, I'd highly recommend it. So I hope that kind of answers any questions anybody had about review-wise. I mean, if you have any other questions about it, feel free to ask. But I think I pretty much covered everything about it. You know, all in all, I would highly recommend it. You know, if you're looking for one, this model on the used market, or even, you know, the new ones, the new body style, Rancher, AT, DCT, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, thanks for watching.